how I like it.
Hello everyone, this is my updated Bex build. I'll be going over the build mechanics, the gear, the skills, and the specializations in this video. So we're going to start off with the build mechanics. Primarily, this build is going to be revolving around the complex route. How the complex route works is that it spawns diverging projectiles along its path. And pictured here, it shows that I shoot 7 projectiles per shot. And you want to have a complex route that has a Jacobs and Atlas fire on it. So what Jacobs does is that critical hits create more projectiles. If all the projectiles happen to crit, it creates an additional set of projectiles when it ricochets. So a total of 49 projectiles from just one shot, assuming it all crits. What this means is that the bigger the target, the easier it is for all the projectiles to hit the target, and Atlas helps with this because Atlas throws a target tracker and all the projectiles will try to hone in on that tracker. So with this build, we have 2 options. We can go either no minions or with minions. Either way can work, and you can swap in between whenever you want because we are able to be spec'd into both trees. So depending on your playstyle, you can swap in between whenever you want. So the benefits for no minions is that you have more raw damage with the witchy trigger finger stacking up to 6 times. And you have free reloads and there's no animation cost when you reload. On the other hand, if you go the minions route, you get 30% more crit chance. The more crit chance we have, the more crit related procs we can initiate and the more faster kill skill procs we can get. The downside of the minions is that it requires a setup and the action skill is a little bit longer than the incarnate. So for shields, so we're using What's for Dinner primarily with AMP. However, you can also use the protein cell. And what the protein cell does is that it gives you 40% bonus shock damage, but it also applies to every instance of damage, including your minions and dots. So with this shield, your minions will just be able to do way more damage, as well as your dots. I'm not sure if this shield comes with AMP. If it does, it would be better than What's for Dinner, but I currently haven't been able to find one. I'm not sure if it does spawn with AMP or not. What's for Dinner, on the other hand, is just more consistent. Gives you just flat 25% shock damage. The only thing is it doesn't apply to your dots and it doesn't count for your minions. It's only for yourself. The benefit with this one is that it does come with AMP, and if you have 150% AMP, your damage just skyrockets immensely. You're able to sustain AMP with the class mod Teen Witch. So Teen Witch is the class mod of choice. Reason for this is because every time we fire a shot, we are able to life steal from it. And whenever we have full life, we are able to regenerate our shields. When our shields are full, we're able to get over shield. So this pairs very nicely with What's for Dinner with Amp. So it just creates a cycle. So the more damage we do, the more lifesteal we get, and so on. And it just keeps repeating. Essentially, you're going to have permanent shields, and you're going to have a lot of damage for every shot you take. Ideally, for your class mod, you want to have 10% gun crit chance. I believe this is the best one because we don't have a lot of sources of crit chance. So the more crit chance you can get, the better, because it will help to trigger your kill skill procs. The best enhancements, I have them listed here. Do note that gun damage and gun critical damage is just a must-have on every enhancement. It is a multiplier to damage. I posted a video before showcasing how gun damage and crit damage just multiplies your damage so much so that you can even kill bosses without any skill points. So I just want to go over some of the enhancements I have here. If you're going to be using Atlas, you want to use the Vindictive JX Junction. This allows you to do way more damage, and it pairs really well with Enraged Repkits. If you are planning on just using the Stellium, it's a type of shotgun, use the primed potency modifier here with the Mallow one. It pairs really well with Amp Repkits. The best all-rounder would be the Jacobs. This just allows your ricochets to be more consistent. And if you can't find any of these enhancements, you could just find a purple one. And anything with gun damage and gun critical damage is just a must-have. Instead of shotgun damage, you just want either gun damage or sniper rifle damage. For our Repkits, here are my two choices. I recommend using Enrage. It's just the best all-rounder. It's very consistent. You can also use one with Amp. Amp works really well if you're going to be using a Stellium with our reload dot playstyle. It's really good for bossing. Also note that your dots can snapshot. If you use prime potency, your Guns of Battle 1 licensed parts have 100% status effect chance on the first bullet after reload. So what this means, when you're using the Stellium, you fire a shot, you reload, you amp, and then your next shot that you take will have amplified damage, and that includes your dots. So here's the Ordnances. You can use anything. Since we don't really use Ordnances for this build, I recommend using anything that has a rocket because it helps with killing the bio crystals. You can also use the crit knife if you want. If you're in a team, only one of you guys need to have it. For the guns, here are my choices for bossing. We're using the complex route. Be sure to use the correct element. Depending on the boss you're fighting, it does make a difference. However, as long as you're able to consistently proc your dots with it, not having the right element is not a huge detriment, but having the correct one does speed up the kills immensely. If you're going to be using the complex route, I recommend using either the Atlas enhancement or the Jacobs enhancement. And for the Repkit, use Enrage. Here's the alternative guns. You can use a Stellium, which is a purple shotgun, and just use the correct element depending on the boss you're fighting. Bonus if you have a Stellium that has energy disc and Jacobs, and this allows your energy disc to instantly kill any bosses really quick. The Stellium is a slow firing shotgun, but it does a lot of dot damage. That's why it has a lot of elemental dot right here. You pair this up with a Malawan that has a prime potency, which makes your status effects to become a dot. You pair that up with Amp, and you're able to do a lot of damage with the dot. The best firmware for this build, you want to use 3 out of 3 Deadeye. More damage is just faster kills. It works for all sources of damage that crits. And just get 2 out of 3 on high caliber. Projectile speed is nice, and the gun damage provides a consistent source of damage compared to others. An alternative firmware is the Atlas Infinium. This pairs really well if you're going to be using the Atlas trackers, and if they ever decide to scale the bosses far beyond what is current, this might be a strong contender. And if the boss doesn't die in like less than 10 seconds or takes like longer than a minute, I think this would be a strong contender because the target lock lasts forever and you're just able to fire without even aiming at the boss. Okay, so for our skill tree, we are going primarily Incarnate. You want to get Grave Sights, more crit damage, Grave Implements, more gun damage. You want to get 3 out of 3 on Grave Power. This increases your stacks. And get 2 out of 5 just so you can get enough skill points to move down to the tree. So how I mentioned, our crit chance is fairly low. It's only giving us 6%. But if we get another 10% from our class mod, that's going to help with the gun crit chance. So the more crit chance you have, the better. Down here, we get Drink Full for more attack speed. And we have 3 out of 5 Mortal Terror. If we had more points, ideally you'd want to max this out, but there's not that many points to be spared. So that's what you want to get. And over here on the left side, we have 2 out of 5 on Grave Sustenance. This helps keep your Incarnate up a little bit longer. If you're primarily planning on using minions only, you could take 2 points out of here and you can place them down here for Grave Quickening instead. Now for the blue tree, you can get 3 out of 3 Idle Hands, 2 out of 5 for Sanguine Fiends. This helps keep your minions alive a little bit longer. If you're not planning on using minions, it's still a nice benefit to have, just to be able to keep your health at full HP. Since we don't have any sources of leech other than our class mod and 2 points out of Grave Thirst. Over here, you want to get Grave Assault. This gives you more cast speed, attack speed. And over here, we have more dot damage. Down here, Prismatic Ichor. This scales immensely, so the more dots we apply, the more it can re-trigger, and it can scale even further. And Keen Suffering, this allows your dots to crit, and this also pairs very nicely with Prismatic Ichor. Do note that we are not using Bloodletter, but if you did want to use Bloodletter, you could probably move points out of Grave Implements into Bloodletter, and you could probably move points out of Drink Full into Keen Mind. But if they are planning on reworking our bleeds on the next patch, I'll have to make an update video on how that works. For specializations, ideally you just want to get Little Udis, gives you more gun damage, best defense, and contamination is a must. Compounding afflictions is nice overall. However, you could also just move points into Now of Caffeine, just so you can have more action skill cooldown. And how, like I mentioned here, you can either go incarnate if you want, or if you want to use the minion playstyle, you can also use Coven here. Like I said, the point system is very tight. If you want to use heirloom, you could potentially move 2 of these points and you can place them down here in the blue. Get 5 out of 5 keen suffering and you can unlock heirloom, and then you can place the remaining point under grave quickening if you want. But with this setup, this allows you to swap in between incarnate if you want to have the solo playstyle, or you can go to Dead Ringers and have Coven accessible. So either playstyle works. And that is it for the build. Thanks for watching. Bye.